It's very difficult to know what the purpose of something like Gobeklitepe could be.
Modern artificial intelligence has just confirmed a prehistoric nightmare recorded on stone tablets found in Turkey. These carvings at Gobeklitepe show a massive solar event and a comet strike from 12,000 years ago that ended the last ice age in a wall of fire.
The massive tower there, which again dates back right to the end of the last ice age, a huge megalithic tower with the world's oldest known megalithic stairway.
This discovery is basically the Rosetta Stone for a lost human history that we are just now uncovering. Most people realize the pyramids are old, but this site makes them look like brand new buildings. The pillars reveal a sophisticated calendar system that tracked the end of the world. But the real question is why they wanted us to find this message now. The prehistoric anomaly. The internet is blowing up about an artificial intelligence decoding a mysterious tablet found at the world's oldest temple. You have probably seen the headlines screaming about lost civilizations, but it is not that simple. The truth is actually much stranger than a single tablet, because the entire site of Gobeklitepe is the message. It is a 12,000-year-old computer made of rock, and when you look at the data without the noise, it tells a story of fire, ice, and a warning we have ignored for too long. You have to understand the sheer scale of what we are dealing with here. When we talk about ancient history, our minds usually jump to the Great Pyramids of Egypt, the Sphinx, or maybe the stone circles of Stonehenge. But here's the deal. When the first stone was laid at Stonehenge, Gobeklitepe was already ancient history. It was already a ruin. We are talking about a site that predates the invention of the wheel, the written word, pottery, and even the domestication of animals. It is 7,000 years older than the pyramids. It is so old that it breaks the timeline of human development. For a long time, the story of human history was pretty straightforward. We thought humans were simple hunter-gatherers for hundreds of thousands of years. We ran around in small bands chasing deer, picking berries, and sleeping in temporary shelters. We did not settle down, we did not build massive structures, and we definitely did not have complex math, geometry, or astronomy. The mainstream view was that agriculture came first. Once we figured out how to farm, we had the free time to sit around, invent religion, and build temples. But then, Gobeklitepe was found, and it threw that entire timeline into the shredder. Located in the Jermis Mountains of southeastern Turkey, this place is massive. We are talking about circular enclosures with huge T-shaped pillars arranged in perfect circles. Some of these pillars are 18 feet tall and weigh up to 20 tons. And remember, the people who built this did not have metal tools or lasers. They did not have beasts of burden like oxen or horses. They moved these limestone giants by hand uphill hundreds of yards from the quarry. The engineering alone is baffling. To move a 20-ton stone block without wheels requires hundreds of men, ropes, and a level of coordination that hunter-gatherers supposedly did not have. You need to feed those hundreds of men, and you need water, which is nowhere to be found near the site. The nearest water source is miles away. This implies they had a logistics network, a supply chain, and a hierarchy. It implies a civilization that was fully formed, popping up out of nowhere. But the crazy part is not just the size, it is what is on them. These pillars are covered in carvings that are high-relief sculptures protruding from the stone. Foxes, boars, cranes, scorpions, vultures, and strange abstract symbols are everywhere. For years, archaeologists looked at these and said, it was ritualistic. Maybe these animals represent spirits or clan totems. It was the safe answer that fit the narrative. But recently, the conversation has shifted, and that is putting it lightly. Rumors started flying around about an artificial intelligence decoding a tablet found at the site. Let us clear the air immediately, because there is no single handheld stone tablet that an artificial intelligence scanned and magically translated. That is the internet playing a game of telephone. However, the reality is way more impressive. The pillars themselves are the tablets. They are massive standing data centers. Focus your attention on Pillar 43. This is the smoking gun, often called the Vulture stone. It is packed with symbolism that looks chaotic at first glance, but when researchers started looking at it through the lens of probability and astronomy, patterns emerged that are impossible to ignore. This was not just art, this was data. The headlines claiming artificial intelligence decoded it are exaggerating the method, but they are not wrong about the complexity. We are using modern statistical analysis to check the probability of these symbols appearing by random chance. And the odds are astronomical. The theory gaining traction is that the people of Gobeklitepe were not just carving animals they saw in the wild. They were carving the sky. The scorpion is not just a bug, because it represents the constellation Scorpius. The bull is Taurus, and the lion is Leo. They were mapping the stars with a precision that rivals civilizations thousands of years younger than them. So why go to all this trouble? Why drag 20-ton stones up a hill and carve the zodiac into them? You do not do that for decoration. You do that because you need to remember something huge. What most people do not realize is that these carvings might be the oldest date ever recorded. They are drawing the stars as they looked at a very specific moment in time. And when we wind back the clock using computer simulations of the Earth's wobble, a process called precession. The date that matches Pillar 43 is terrifying. It points directly to a moment when the world changed forever. But before we get to the catastrophe, we have to understand the tool they used to record it. This was a complex lunar-solar calendar that proves they were thousands of years ahead of their time. But if they were this advanced, why did they bury it all on purpose? The mystery of why they hid their work only deepens when you look at the math. The Vulture Stone's secrets. Let us dive into the code itself because this is where things get technical and change everything we know about the origins of science. On these pillars, specifically Pillar 43, you see these distinct V-shapes. They are small and carved into the stone in a way that seems random. Mainstream researchers often dismiss them as decorative patterns, or maybe simple tally marks for hunting. Just counting gazelles or days of a hunt sounds like a safe bet. But researchers took a closer look and realized these were not random scratches. They were units of time. If you count the V-shapes on the main pillar, you get a number that looks awfully familiar to anyone who owns a modern calendar. Each V represents a single day. When you add them up, keeping in mind the cycles of the moon and the sun, you get a tracking system for the solar year. We are talking about a lunar-solar calendar. This is a system that tracks the 12 lunar months, which is about 354 days, and then adds the necessary 11 extra days to sync up with the solar year of 365 days. Why is this a big deal? Because history books tell us the Greeks or the Sumerians were the first to really nail this down thousands of years later. If the builders of Gobeklitepe had a working solar calendar in 9600 before the Common Era, it means they understood the movement of the Earth around the Sun long before we thought it was possible. And get this, there is a carving of a bird on the pillar holding a V-shape around its neck, like a necklace. This has been interpreted as the summer solstice marker. The bird represents the constellation present at the solstice, and the V marks the day. Now, critics say this is just seeing faces in clouds. They argue the animals are just animals. But here is the kicker. The statistical probability of these animals matching the constellations of that specific era by accident is vanishingly small. If you draw a random zoo of animals, the chances that the scorpion lands exactly where Scorpius is in the sky, and the wolf lands where Lupus is, and the bird lands where Cygnus is, it is like winning the lottery 3 times in a row. The tablet idea that went viral is basically referring to this consolidated information found on Pillar 43. It acts like a Rosetta Stone for the stars and suggests that these people were obsessed with time. You do not build a massive stone computer just to know when to plant corn, especially when you are technically still a hunter-gatherer. You build it because you are tracking something else that is very dangerous. The layout of the pillars seems to track the precession of the equinoxes. This is the slow wobble of the Earth's axis over 26,000 years. It is a subtle movement that most people do not even notice in a lifetime. To notice it, you need records kept for generations. You need a dedicated class of astronomers and a priesthood of science. This implies a level of social organization that totally contradicts the primitive caveman narrative. You cannot have people hauling 20-ton rocks if everyone is starving and looking for berries. You need a surplus of food and a hierarchy. And this brings us to one of the wilder theories about where this knowledge came from. Did they figure it out over thousands of years of trial and error, or was it a remnant? Some researchers argue that the precision at Gobeklitepe is too good for a first attempt. Usually in archaeology, you see the clumsy first tries. You see the mud hut before the stone castle. But Gobeklitepe appears fully formed, perfect, and massive. It suggests that the knowledge was brought there. This leads to the idea of a transfer of technology. Maybe the survivors of a previous lost civilization, perhaps one that lived on the coastlines that are now underwater, fled to the mountains of Turkey. They brought their math, their astronomy, and their masonry skills with them. They were the teachers attempting to jumpstart civilization again after a collapse. And the carvings back this up. The symbols are not just a calendar, they are a timestamp for a crime scene. The calendar locks in the date, but the other symbols tell us what happened on that date. It was not a celebration, it was a memorial for the day the sun brought death. The sky began to rain fire and the world entered a dark age. The Younger Dryas event. So what date does the Vulture stone point to exactly? The alignment of the stars on Pillar 43 matches the sky around 10,850 before the Common Era, which is roughly 12,800 years ago. If you know your geology, that date should send a shiver down your spine. That is the exact start of the Younger Dryas period. For those who do not know, the Earth was warming up nicely coming out of the last ice age. Glaciers were melting, and sea levels were rising slowly. Life was good, and humans were expanding. And then practically overnight in geological terms, the planet plummeted back into a deep freeze. Temperatures dropped drastically, some say by 15 degrees Fahrenheit in a single decade. The megafauna like mammoths, saber-toothed cats, and giant sloths vanished. The Clovis people in North America disappeared. For decades, scientists debated what caused this. Was it a change in ocean currents or a volcanic eruption? But Gobeklitepe offers a different witness testimony. The carvings show what looks like a headless figure. In ancient art, headless figures usually mean one thing: mass death and a catastrophe. And next to these figures, we see symbols that look like swarms of snakes or foxes. Researchers interpret these not as animals, but as meteors. A meteor shower coming from a specific point in the sky. The theory is known as the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. It suggests that a massive comet, maybe over 60 miles wide, entered the inner solar system and began to break apart. As Earth passed through the debris tail of this giant comet, we did not just get a pretty light show, we got bombarded. Large fragments exploded in the atmosphere with the force of thousands of nuclear bombs. This caused massive wildfires that burned 10% of the world's biomass. The smoke blocked the sun, causing the temperature to crash. This was the solar event. Not the sun exploding, but the sky darkening and raining fire. And it is not just the carvings that say this, because we have physical evidence. Scientists have found a platinum spike in soil layers from this exact time all over North America, Greenland, and Europe. Platinum is rare on Earth, but common in comets. We have also found microscopic nanodiamonds, which are only formed under the extreme pressure of a cosmic impact. Geologists call it the black mat. It is a thin layer of dark soil found across continents. Below it, you find mammoth bones and Clovis spear points. Above it, you find nothing. It is a line of death in the geological record. Gobeklitepe is the memorial built by the people who saw that line being drawn. But here is where it gets even crazier, because some researchers looking at the H symbols and the strange handbags carved onto the top of the pillars think it goes beyond just a rock hitting the ground. There is a theory called the plasma universe. It suggests that the comet impact might have disturbed the Earth's magnetic field, or interacted with solar storms, creating massive plasma discharges in the sky. Imagine looking up and seeing not just clouds, but massive glowing shapes of electricity, twisting and morphing like neon gods. High-energy plasma discharges take shapes that look exactly like the stick figures seen in ancient rock art all over the world. Could the carvings at Gobeklitepe be depicting this? The strange abstract symbols could be records of the sky, literally glowing with electricity. The pillars seem to point to the Torrid meteor stream as the culprit. Even today, we pass through the Torrid stream every year around late October and November. Usually, it is just a few shooting stars, but 12,000 years ago, it was a dense minefield of rock and ice. This changes the entire context of the temple. They did not build it to pray for rain. They built it to memorialize the event that nearly wiped them out. Imagine the survivors. The world they knew is gone. The sky turned black, and the animals are dying. It is freezing cold. The few who survived the impact and the fires realized they needed to preserve the knowledge of what happened. They realized the stars were the clock that told them when the danger might return. So they mobilized. They stopped wandering. They built these massive enclosures on a hill which has a perfect view of the southern sky. And they carved the story into the bedrock. This is what happened, and this is when it happened. Watch the sky. It explains why agriculture started right around this time and place. They could not rely on hunting anymore because the ecosystems had collapsed. They had to farm to survive. The end of their world was actually the beginning of our civilization. The agriculture ground zero. This brings us back to the artificial intelligence headlines and why this is blowing up now. While the idea of a robot reading a tablet is fiction, the use of advanced technology is what is cracking this case wide open. We are using statistical algorithms to analyze the placement of the pillars. We are using ground-penetrating radar to see what is still buried. And nearly 90% of Gobeklitepe is still underground. The decoding refers to the statistical validation of the astronomical theory. When you run the numbers on the placement of the fox, the crane, and the scorpion, the odds of them being random decoration are 1 in millions. That is the artificial intelligence confirmation. It is math telling us that this is a deliberate message. But there is another layer to this. It is not just about the past. It is about the durability of the message. Think about how we store information today. Hard drives corrupt and paper rots. Even languages change. If you wrote a warning in English today, in 5,000 years, nobody would be able to read it. The builders of Gobeklitepe were smarter than us in this regard. They used a language that never changes, the stars. The position of the stars is a universal constant. Any intelligent civilization, even 10,000 years from now, could look at Pillar 43, look at the sky, run the math on the wobble of the Earth, and pinpoint the exact date the builders were talking about. They created a message that is time-proof. Now let us get into the really wild territory that mainstream science hates to touch. First, let us talk about DNA. Geneticists have traced the ancestor of all domesticated wheat to a specific location. Guess where? The Karakadog Mountains, barely 20 miles from Gobeklitepe. This means this exact spot is ground zero for agriculture. Is it a coincidence that the most advanced stone temple and the very first genetic modification of plants happened in the exact same place at the exact same time? Some theorists ask if Gobeklitepe was a laboratory. Were the Watchers mentioned in ancient texts actually referring to this group of elites who brought agriculture to humanity? Ancient texts talk about Watchers descending and teaching humans civilization, metalwork, and astronomy. This happened in the same general region. Could these pillars be the legacy of those teachers? And then there are the handbags. On the top of Pillar 43, there are 3 carvings that look exactly like handbags. You see these same bags in ancient Sumerian art held by mysterious figures in Mexico and in New Zealand. How did cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years all decide to carve the exact same specific symbol? The theory is that it represents a kit of knowledge, the seeds of civilization carried by the survivors of the cataclysm. And we cannot ignore the acoustics. Some researchers claim that the stone circles are designed to resonate at specific frequencies. When you chant or beat drums inside these enclosures, the sound changes. Some even suggest that sound was used to help move the stones. While that sounds like science fiction, we know that sound waves can lift small objects in a lab today. Could they have known a larger version of this physics? The more we dig, the more we realize we are looking at a technology we do not understand. And here is where the buried-on-purpose mystery gets darker. Why did they cover it up? They did not just abandon it. They deliberately filled the enclosures with dirt and rubble. It was a massive undertaking, almost as much work as building it. Some say it was to protect the pillars. Maybe they knew another catastrophe was coming. Or maybe the culture changed, and they wanted to seal the old gods away. But by burying it, they saved it. If they had left it exposed to the weather for 12,000 years, the carvings would have eroded away. The message would be lost. By burying it, they placed it in a time capsule, waiting for a civilization advanced enough to dig it up and understand the code. That civilization is us. Do you think these pillars are a real warning about a comet, or are we just seeing patterns in the dust? Is civilization much older than we think? Let me know your wildest theories in the comments. If you love uncovering lost history, smash that like button and subscribe. You definitely do not want to miss our next deep dive.